Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to today's deep dive. If you're listening to this, you've probably been in a boardroom, a Zoom call, or, frankly, just read the news anytime in the last year. So you know that artificial intelligence is no longer just a buzzword.
Right. It's everywhere now.
It is actively rewriting how businesses operate. But we are looking at a really fascinating piece of research today. It's by Dr. Jonathan H. Westover, titled Reimagining Human Capital, Navigating Workforce Transformation in the Age of Artificial Intelligence. And it honestly completely flips the conventional wisdom on its head.
It really does.
The core mission of our deep dive today is to explore his main argument, which is that successfully integrating AI into a company is actually a human-centric challenge, not just a technical one.
Which is, a crucial distinction that most leadership teams are currently just missing entirely.
Yeah.
We have this tendency to view AI as just another software upgrade, right? Like migrating to a new email server. You buy the license, you install it, and you expect immediate ROI.
Yep, the plug-and-play mindset. Which is how I usually look at things, to be honest. I'm coming at this from the strategic analyst side, looking at operating models and efficiency. But you're looking at this through the lens of an organizational psychologist, focused on human behavior and workforce well-being.
Exactly. And Westover's research paints a very different, much more complex picture of what actually happens to the human beings using the tech.
And to set the stakes for this, I want to start with a statistic from the paper, because it's wild. According to the data, 60 to 70% of AI projects fail to move from the pilot phase into full production.
That is a staggering number.
Right, just with that for a second. You have companies pouring millions of dollars into these initiatives, and the vast majority just stall out.
Yeah.
And they aren't failing because the neural networks are broken or, the cloud infrastructure collapses. They fail because leaders severely underestimate the complex, messy reality of integrating machines with human workflows.
It's a classic trap. They over-index on the technology while completely ignoring the sociology of the workplace. If your entire strategy is just, deploy the algorithm, the data shows you are statistically doomed to fail.
So let's look at why that happens, starting with what Westover calls the illusion of simple automation. Because looking at operating models all the time, the mindset I see is usually incredibly linear.
Oh, very linear.
A company look at their balance sheet, they see a highly repetitive task, let's say basic customer inquiry sorting, and they think, great, we can automate this, cut overhead, improve margins.
Just a straightforward headcount reduction.
Exactly. But the reality is never that clean.
No, it never is. And what's fascinating here is Westover's concept of the ripple effects. When you drop AI into an ecosystem, it doesn't just sit in isolation doing its one little job.
Right, it touches everything.
It sends cascading shockwaves through the entire organizational structure. To use your customer service chatbot example, a company deploys the bot, assuming they can just scale back their frontline phone staff.
Makes sense on paper.
Sure, on paper. But almost overnight, that same company discovers a frantic need for roles that literally didn't exist in their org chart yesterday.
Yep.
Suddenly, they need prompt engineers to keep the bot from giving bad advice, data validators to check its accuracy, and experienced designers to figure out what happens when the bot inevitably frustrates a human caller.
You pull one lever to save money on a process, and you accidentally spawn an entirely new department. The paper categorizes this chaos into three distinct phenomena that actually happen simultaneously.
Right.
The first is task automation. That's the basic stuff we all expect, right? The machine doing the invoice processing or the resume screening.
Real routine stuff.
Exactly. But then you immediately trigger the second thing, which is role augmentation. The AI acts as a co-pilot, and suddenly human workers are forced to process 10 times the amount of information and make much faster decisions.
Which completely changes the pace of their day.
And finally, you get work transformation.
Right.
Which is the creation of completely new job categories and business models.
And the blind spot for most executives is thinking they can cherry pick just the automation part.
You can't.
You really can't. They happen together. If you automate a task, you inherently augment the surrounding roles, which ultimately transforms the work. Think about your own day-to-day right now. Is the leadership in your organization treating AI as just a fancy macro to speed up your spreadsheets? Or are they actually preparing for a fundamental shift in how your department operates?
If it's just a fancy macro, they are in for a rude awakening. And that brings up the actual toll this takes on the workforce. We hear a lot of, generalized panic about robots taking our jobs.
The sci-fi doom scenarios.
Yeah, but the data Westover presents is far more nuanced. Only 5 to 8% of jobs face a high risk of total displacement over the next decade.
Which is pretty low, all things considered.
Exactly. The apocalyptic mass unemployment scenario isn't really supported by the data. However, a massive 40 to 50% of roles will experience severe task reallocation.
That is the number that matters. You might keep your job title, but your day-to-day will be completely unrecognizable. And stepping to the organizational psychologist role here, this is where we have to look at the psychological friction.
Because it's not just about the tasks.
Right. The real threat isn't job loss. It's the psychological impact of that internal task reallocation. The paper breaks this down into a few core crises. The first being identity disruption.
I found this concept so fascinating because it really gets to the ego of the professional.
It totally does.
It's not just about what you do, it's about who you think you are.
Exactly. Let's look at a seasoned radiologist or a senior financial analyst. These are people who have spent a decade or more building highly specialized expertise.
Blood, sweat, and tears to get there. And a lot of money on education. Their value to the organization and, frankly, their own professional self-worth is entirely tied to their mastery of complex data or medical imaging. When a company brings in an AI system that can replicate a significant chunk of that specialized analysis in, say, 3 seconds, it creates a literal identity crisis for the worker.
It's not just a new tool.
No, it feels like an encroachment on their professional soul. The mastery that made them essential is suddenly commoditized. But I'll push back on that slightly because isn't this just the same technological panic we saw when computers replaced typewriters or when spreadsheets replaced ledger books? Like, people adapt, don't they?
They do adapt, but it's different this time because of the nature of the work being displaced. A typewriter didn't replicate human judgment, right? It just made the physical output faster.
Okay.
AI is encroaching on cognitive tasks, synthesis, prediction, analysis. That cuts much deeper into a knowledge worker's identity than just upgrading a physical tool.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And it ties directly into the second psychological toll the research highlights, which is performance anxiety.
Yeah.
Because if the machine is doing the synthesis, the human is suddenly competing with the machine's pace.
Right, we get this unspoken pressure. Management starts looking at the AI's processing benchmarks. Thousands of documents analyzed per minute, and consciously or subconsciously expects the human workers in the loop to match that hyper-efficiency.
Which is impossible.
Completely impossible. It creates an entirely unrealistic baseline in fields where human judgment is still critical. You have workers terrified of falling behind an algorithm that doesn't need to sleep, doesn't take lunch breaks, and doesn't pick up its kids from daycare. It leads to profound burnout.
And compounding all of that is the question of agency, or what Westover calls autonomy loss. Workers feel stripped of their professional agency when they don't understand how an AI system is making decisions that affect their work.
The black box problem.
Exactly. Imagine being told by an algorithm to deny a loan application or reroute a supply chain, but you have no visibility into the logic behind that decision. From an operational standpoint, if you strip away a person's understanding of their own workflow, they become completely disengaged.
You're turning them into a resentful meat widget.
A very expensive meat widget. So what does this all mean? How do organizations actually fix this? The research makes it clear you can't just overlay AI onto old static workflows.
It's an operational disaster if you try.
You have to do a full operating model redesign. The Progressive Insurance example from the text is perfect for this. They didn't just add an AI tool and tell their claims adjusters to work faster.
Right, they reconfigure the whole workflow.
Yeah, they set up the AI to handle all the routine, low-complexity claims end-to-end, like a basic fender bender with clear photos, zero human intervention. But the second the algorithm detected any complexity, a liability dispute, potential fraud, it instantly routed it to an experienced human adjuster.
They use the AI to remove the busy work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the result, 40% faster resolution times.
Right.
But more importantly, happier, more valuable human adjusters. They weren't threatened because the AI took away the data entry they hated, freeing them to use their human empathy and critical thinking.
But getting a workforce to accept a massive workflow overhaul like that requires a specific approach to leadership. The psychological solution here is procedural justice.
Let's break that down because it sounds super academic, but it's really practical.
It is. Procedural justice basically means that people care deeply about how a decision is made, sometimes even more than the outcome itself.
Okay.
The research is clear workers will accept massive, even highly disruptive changes to their daily routines if they believe the decision-making process was transparent and inclusive.
It's the difference between doing something with your team versus doing it to them.
Precisely. And the paper highlights a cautionary tale of major retailers to show the dark side of this. They rolled out algorithmic scheduling systems to predict foot traffic and optimize shifts purely for efficiency. But it was a top-down mandate.
And the workers had no input.
None. The algorithm just spit out schedules. It led to unpredictable hours, massive income volatility, and the workers felt completely dehumanized, which naturally led to severe backlash and aggressive unionization campaigns. That is a failure of procedural justice.
Now, contrast that with Target's success. They needed similar tech, but they started with volunteer pilot programs. They surveyed employees about scheduling constraints, actually used that worker feedback to tune the algorithm, and then rolled it out smoothly.
Because the workers had a voice in shaping it.
Exactly. And we see this in specialized fields, too. Westover brings up DLA Piper, the massive law firm. When they wanted AI to analyze legal contracts, they knew lawyers would reject a black box.
Oh, lawyers hate black box.
They really do. So DLA Piper put the lawyers in charge. They created evaluation teams led by attorneys to assess the AI's accuracy and define the protocols for human oversight.
That is brilliant.
Right. It preserved their professional judgment and accelerated adoption. And there is even if you do all this, there's a massive capability gap. I call it the training illusion.
Yes, the math on this is staggering.
The research shows it takes about 100 to 200 hours of structured learning to master these AI-intensive roles. But companies usually provide what? A measly 20 to 40 hours?
Like a Friday afternoon webinar and a good luck pat on the back?
Exactly. You can't navigate a transformed job with that. Organizations need to build multi-level learning architectures.
And Amazon's Machine Learning University is the gold standard for this adaptive talent system.
What makes it so different?
They teach everyone. They have distinct curriculums. Executives get AI literacy so they understand the strategy. Middle managers learn how to lead AI-augmented teams, which is a totally different cadence. And technical specialists get the deep dive. It's a continuous ecosystem.
But Amazon has billions. What about the transition safety nets the paper talks about, like AT&T's Workforce 2020 initiative? They invested $1 billion into retraining.
Which is incredible.
Yeah, they offered income protection, generous retraining, internal mobility. They successfully redeployed 50% of affected workers. But if I'm a mid-market company, I don't have $1 billion.
No, but the principle of the safety net scales down. Even thoughtful transitions hurt. The point is to mitigate the existential panic. A smaller company can offer transparent timelines, telling staff their jobs are secure for the next 18 months while they transition.
Removing the fear.
Exactly. If an employee is terrified of being laid off, their cognitive load is consumed by panic. They literally cannot learn the new system.
That makes total sense. So assuming a company does all this, safety nets, multi-level training, procedural justice, you are still left with the most profound question in the entire paper.
What is the purpose of the human in the room?
Exactly.
This is the psychological climax of the transition. If AI handles the routine, we have to intentionally reframe human roles to focus on judgment, empathy, and ethical oversight.
Think about your own job for a second. What are the distinctly human elements of your day? If AI handled the rote tasks, how much bandwidth would you have for real strategy?
We have case studies in Dignity to prove this works. Look at education. Arizona State University used AI tutors to handle routine knowledge delivery, drilling students on math at 2 a.m.
Which freed up the human teachers.
Exactly. They focused on student mentorship and emotional support. The AI absorbed the friction so humans could focus on the mission.
And it works in logistics, too. UPS involved their veteran drivers in their route optimization algorithms. The AI calculated the math, but they allowed the drivers to retain real-time route discretion based on their local knowledge.
Preserving their autonomy.
It preserved their dignity, yeah. So bringing it all together, the core thesis here is clear. The organizations that thrive won't be the ones with the best technology.
No, they'll be the ones that treat AI as a socio-technical challenge. Prioritizing workforce well-being, transparent communication, and continuous learning alongside operational efficiency.
The human element is the ultimate competitive advantage.
It really is. And I want to leave you with a final lingering question to ponder. We've talked a lot about tasks and workflows, but if artificial intelligence increasingly becomes our primary collaborator for day-to-day tasks, replacing the routine interactions we currently have with human colleagues, how will that fundamentally alter the social fabric, the culture, and the loyalty within our organizations?
Wow. That is a heavy thought to end on. It really shifts the focus from how we work to how we connect.
It does.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the evolving world around you, and we'll catch you next time.